I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Hey, what's up, world? Welcome to this special edition of I Mix What I Like Live. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Happy to be your host. Let's get right to it. Obviously, he's very busy and in the middle of covering this trial, so I don't want to take up too much of his time. Mel Reeves, longtime journalist and currently with the Minnesota Spokesman. I want to say review, or is it recorder? I keep
recorder, brother, man.
Recorder. My apologies. My apologies. Yeah, you've been out there covering the trial. I appreciate you coming through to give us a heads up. I have a number of questions. I don't know if there's something you want to start us off with that you think we need to know, but or if you want to just get to the questions I have, but because I've been trying to watch it and follow your work, but
whatever you think is most important. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. I was on Democracy Now! This morning, and those folks never cease to surprise you on some level. And I was all prepared to really talk about deeper issues. And Amy Goodman, and it was early, and I'm not early, she threw me a curveball. She talked about the bystanders, right? And it was cool, I guess, but wasn't in my mind. She was like, hey, wasn't it great that, the bystanders did what they did? And my thinking was, well, okay. And then she's like, and they were really restrained. I'm like, well, of course they were restrained, right? The police were threatening them, but it was one of those clueless things that people do sometimes. It really reveals where they come from. Because what I should have said, and I just caught me off guard, I kind of said, well, yeah, of course they were acting like human beings, and wanted to help this brother. But what I should have said was, there's nothing really all that unusual about what those folks are doing. The people in my neighborhood do that kind of stuff all the time. You know what I'm saying? We're compassionate human beings. To make it sound like it's a lot of folks, you would have done that. Had I rolled up, most people I know would have been like, hey, you killing the dude. Most people I know would have stopped and tried to, especially had they been there, they would have, tried to offer assistance or try to get the cops to get off them. So, there was no, it's exceptional in the sense that, they were dedicated to really trying to get him out. But, most folks we know act human like that. And that the people who are savage, because I pointed out the defense, tried to make him out to be, some wild mob. What I should have said, and I can say to y'all's audience, that the wild mob, the folk acting like animals, were the cops.
That's saying?
Right. And the focus needs to be put on the cops. So anyway, that's my whole thing, brother. So I can just start. If you got a question, otherwise I can start rolling. Right now, in fact, the paramedic is on trial right now.
Yeah. I was looking at that. I mean, first of all, I'm happy to have you, clarify or correct anything you didn't get to say this morning. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see, I didn't see your appearance on Democracy Now! But my initial thought, though, is that I would want. I would like to see us get to the point where we're less restrained in those moments. I think if anything, there was too much. if I'm not really sure I'm catching everything that she was attempting to do in her question, but to suggest that there's a lack of humanity in these communities is the mistake. In fact, the abundance of humanity, I think, is evidenced in the the insufficient reaction, as I might.
Yeah, it was a strange question because she said people were restrained. So I don't know if she was getting because one of the things that people raised and folks feel like really guilty about it. In fact, Donald Williams broke down on MSNBC not shortly after, because the other thing they're doing, and I keep forgetting to mention it, they're carrying survivor's guilt because they feel like, we could have done something. And I always said, man, it would have been great if one of the younger people had the presence of mind to just run up and push Chauvin and run. That would have saved his life, because they would have to get up off George Floyd. But if somebody could have just run and pushed him and took off, they probably got away. But, if you interfere with them, you pretty much are going to put your life on the line. I mean, that's the other reality. And to your point, I do believe that day is coming. I believe that the day is coming when there's going to be a George Floyd situation, and the folks are going to look around and say, well, we might have numbers and we'll take our chances. That day is clearly coming. I may not be around to see it, but you can only, Freddie Douglass talked about, you can only kick folks for so long. People will only
unfortunately,
stay down for so long.
Unfortunately, the media is having a field day, and I don't want to go off on this, but the media is having a field day with these images of black men attacking Asians in the streets, which is horrific in and of itself. But I just keep thinking, it's not the same. But what I keep saying is,
insane. What if that black guy attacked? That's insane.
And I'm just saying, where's that same energy in when George Floyd is on the ground? Like what anyway. But
I guess no, brother. I think that there was a whole lot of folks that identified with George Floyd's humanity. Remember, we had the biggest protest in the history of the country, in the world, that occurred around, and people. Podunk, Idaho, you know what I'm saying? Left side, West Nebraska, you know what I'm saying? Folks from Wyoming and Holland.
I hope you're right. I do think there's a lot more to it as to why so many people came out last summer than just George Floyd, unfortunately. But I hope to the extent that you're pointing to something, you're right. But let me ask you this, because as I was watching today, I'm wondering, to what extent do you think people in the country outside, not immediately focused on the trial, to what extent do you think that they're not aware that the defense strategy is to depict George as an addict who died not from Chauvin but from an overdose on pills he took in the car shortly before he got jacked up by the police? I admit I wasn't paying enough attention, so today I was a little like, wow, that's how they're trying to run it. Like, so Chauvin didn't, anyway, to what extent do you think this is an issue that more of us need to be aware of in terms of their strategy? Or what do you think about its effectiveness?
Well, they made that point in their opening statement that they were going to try to criminalize George Floyd. It's obvious in fact, he lied and said that Chauvin's knee was on George's shoulder. So we knew that was coming. They said it. They announced, it's not a surprise to anybody paying attention. They said that they were going to prove that that George Floyd was on drugs. Everybody knew that before. It was pretty much out in the public before that was going to be the defense. So,
but I'm saying, let me say that I admit I missed the detail that went from he was taking drugs and on drugs and high to it was an overdose due to pills that he took in the car just before Chauvin jacked him up, and so that was the part I missed and caught more today. Anyway, so I thought I would ask you about that. And how effective you thought that was carrying in the courtroom.
Well, and we're not going to talk. I don't want to talk a whole lot of time about it because your audience is political, so we're going to get down to real politics of this stuff, right?
All right, I hear you. All right,
so we'll talk a little trial stuff, but we're going to get into the bigger issue. Hopefully. Sure. What I think on the defense. So. The girlfriend admitted that they've been doing drugs. Both of them have been doing drugs. Okay, so the defense, is making a point that he did drugs. So my point is, at the end of the day, it's going to depend on how the jurors see this thing, which is why you saw I did some pretty. Now we ought to talk about that. That's going to be a good discussion to talk about why they didn't want a regular brother on the jury, why the black people they got on the jury weren't organic African Americans. That's an interesting. Don't let me forget to come back to that. But it's going to depend on the jury. At the end of the day, they can say drugs, right? But then when they bring in the medical examiner and all the professionals, the scientists and whatever, they'll get one to say, well, it might have been, but the vast majority are going to say, well, they said it as a homicide. Nobody can argue with that, meaning that somebody killed them. So that won't be arguable. So there'll be different experts saying, yeah, the drugs did and others. Bottom line is that the video, at the end of the day, after you've disparaged George Floyd, right, and said he's a drug addict, the video will still be there, and it's going to be in the minds of jurors, and so they're going to make a decision. And I think at the end of the day, it depends on where they're coming from. They will probably have to find him guilty of something because you can't get rid of the video, no matter what they say about George Floyd, what kind of person he was, how many drugs he took. In fact, today they talked about him actually overdosed. And I made the point, I tweeted out today that, he overdosed one time, but he didn't die. You know what I'm saying? So
I think the prosecutor, their attorneys did, I think, a good job of resetting that point. Like, and even his girlfriend or his was saying, but he didn't die from that. The only problem I had with that was that they kept saying the word passing, like that he passed.
Well, they're gonna do what they're gonna do, Jared.
Like, I'm saying, but even his team was saying that.
What they gonna do? I'm glad you mentioned that. So let's get into the politics of this stuff.
Yeah, let's come on. Let's go let's get into this. And talk about this organic black jury absence piece.
So they know you're watching this trial. They know everybody's watching it. So if you notice, the defense and the prosecution in their opening made the point that this is not a political trial. I think it was the prosecution said this is not a referendum on policing, and the defense said this ain't about politics. Well, I wrote a piece about it, said it's exactly about those things. It's exactly about politics, and it's exactly a referendum on policing in the United States. That's exactly what this is about. Because if they are right, and that Derek Chauvin was doing what he was supposedly paid to do, then what does that say about the system of U.S.? In other words, I say, well, it's a win-win. If they say that, this is what his job was, then we can stop pretending. All us Negroes can stop pretending about the good cops, bad cops. If their job is to do what they did to George Floyd, then we can cut out the foolishness. We can look it straight in the eye and realize that these people are out to kill us if they can, right? And that the law supports that. So that's one of the things that they're trying to prove. They can prove that Derek Chauvin was just doing what he was trained to do. Then, so this is an indictment of the system. Even the film that they've shown. Yesterday, they showed a film, the video from the police camera. So here's the problem. Look at this. They get called about a $20 counterfeit bill. Think about this now. That's it's $20, not a $100 bill. So normally the way that gets handled is, so-and-so had the counterfeit. We write them a ticket, we keep on stepping. But there's a black man, black people involved. So they show up, they pull a pistol on George Floyd right away. Think about it, right away. And so initially when I saw it, you see George Floyd, it looked like George is just being a little crazy. But on second thought, if somebody pulls a pistol on me, I'm a little discombobulated, especially those people in blue. Right, I'm gonna try to keep it together, but I'm gonna be a little nervous because, as George pointed out, they got to get a lot nervous. And George said, "Don't kill me." And initially, he seemed erratic and irrational, but actually, on second look, he's making a lot of sense. These folks have killed folks, and so he's nervous because this guy in blue has a gun pointed at him. So they think, why does he have a gun pointed at a man who passed a $20 bill? So then, as they begin to arrest him, another thing that comes out is, the cop says, we're going to arrest you for forgery. Now, because I possess a counterfeit bill does not make me a forger. It makes me someone who possessed a counterfeit bill. But you see how they upped it on the black man right away? They took the passengers out and criminalized them. So anybody watching from someplace else not familiar with the U.S. So-called justice system and policing system, that's how they operate. They criminalize the people in the car. They forced them to show ID. Now think about, we brag about living in the most democratic, most freest society in the history of the world. But if cops run up on you, they ask for your ID, and people say, well, you don't got to show them ID. Well, yeah, if you want to walk away without some teeth and maybe missing an arm and a leg and, you know what I'm saying, have your ass broke, okay, you know what I'm saying? But reasonable folks like, I don't want to die on this hill. Here's my ID. Now, technically, you might not have, but anyway, they forced them to show ID. They forced them to tell their names. Then he forced them to tell what their business was. Now, against us, those against the law, those the rules. But when the cops roll up against you, up to you, that's what they do. So they criminalized the two people in the passengers who hadn't done anything. And then they said on video, hey, George Floyd's a good guy. He's a nice guy. He gave us a ride. Then the woman also kind of messed up the defense's argument because she says, George is a little jittery. He's a little something. And then she does this a little bit. He's a little mental. So in other words, she's saying that the jitteriness and all this is not because of the drugs so much. He just had a little some issues. So anyway, so that comes out of trouble. But anyway, you get to see how.
But didn't the clerk say he thought he was high, that Floyd was high?
Yeah,
when he called for the police.
The clerk said that
and he felt guilty too. He talking about your
Yeah.
point about the
We're getting back to the whole policing thing. So you get to see, and then the other question, and I meant to write this down. So they're struggling with George, and George is, he's paranoid, and maybe because he's high, no doubt. But the police have scared him. He's told him he's claustrophobic. Anyway, they wind up wrestling with him in the car, which is why the dispatcher said she called the police, because remember, they were in the car wrestling with him for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And then when they finally get him to the other side, here's the question that people haven't asked. Why did they put George Floyd on the ground? I think he did say it, but what were they trying to do when they put him on the ground? They never even said among themselves what they were trying to do. What were they trying to do? As crazy as it may sound, Jared, you realize they never did have a plan that, for all practical purposes, they put him on the ground to kill him. That sounds hyperbolic, but look at the video that they showed. The guy, Alexander King, the mixed brother, had his full weight on George Floyd's back. We didn't see that before. He had his full weight on George Floyd's back, in his back, while Chauvin's on his neck. Dude, he didn't have a chance. So we saw the policing. So the question is, okay, Derek Chauvin in our society is, what are they going to do to make sure we don't have another Derek Chauvin? See, there's all this talk. If you notice, I don't care what municipality you live in, Philadelphia, Chicago, Cincinnati, Miami, Minneapolis, they're talking. But if you notice, there's been no concrete changes in the way the police operate. There's been no concrete suggestions, no concrete measures put in place to hold the police accountable. A real game has been being played, and on some level, we're being real passive. We should really be in the street when we say, look, we're not going to put up with this anymore, because not one municipality has said, here's what's going to happen now. If John Brown cop hits you with that stick, this is what's going to happen, X, Y, and Z. We're going to take the stick from him. He's going to have to go home, for part-time or permanent. That's not happening, brother. Those are the political things we have to talk. Why is this happening? And then why in Minneapolis, just the other day, we went to a press conference. We actually conducted a press, because remember, I need to tell people I'm an activist first, Jared. First and foremost, activist / journalist. I've been doing this for 30-some years, working on all kind of human rights issues. Cut my teeth on doing anti-apartheid work. And also anti-police violence work. We had a kid that was killed here in 1990 that kind of really got their movement going here. But anyway, the question is, what are they going to do? Because this continues to happen, you see. And so if it continues to happen, then we don't really live in a democracy. And we need to challenge the folks who run things. They can't, remember, part of the unwritten contract between us and this society is that they're supposed to protect us, right? We're supposed to have equal protection under the law. If you can't protect us, then you are no longer legitimate, right? This is not a legitimate government because it doesn't do the basic stuff that it's supposed to do for us. And we need to do like us old. We need to challenge this government. Take control of your police. Stop doing stuff to us. Now, if they don't, it's because this is what they want to do. And what they're saying, I know I forgot my point about the kids. So in this environment, which is charged up, it's kind of tense here. You can even hear it in my voice on some level. It's kind of tense in this place, right? Because Black folks really don't feel like Chauvin's going to go to jail. And I'm just telling, and around the country, most people don't. And so you got that environment going on. You got young people still tense. The cops are still running around talking crazy to these kids. And just last Wednesday, there was a situation where they grabbed a kid, supposedly for carjacking. He was the wrong kid. So people in the neighborhood came and said, hey, you got the wrong kid. In fact, his parents would come and hold up. So the cops, get all discombobulated because there's so many Black people around. So they decided to take him to another block. And so in doing that, the kids follow him. They say, we got freedom of movement. So they follow the cops down the street. And while they're doing this, lots of cops now. So I guess the kids are, going back and forth, giving them lip. One of the cops decides to swing on one of the kids. Big cop just swung on him. It's on film. Knocks him down. In fact, they grabbed the kid. What happened was they grabbed the kid, and this is the real punk move. I think the cops would probably have more punks among them than any other body in the country, right? So they're holding the kid, and here's this big punk comes and sucker punches him, then gets him on the ground. So in the midst of all that's going on here, that's what the cops do. And in St. Paul, they issued a no-knock warrant for some 18-year-old kid who had done something he shouldn't have. And so when the mother's there, so she goes to open the door, the cops just push the door open, walk in, they grab the 18-year-old, and one of them decides to choke her 11-year-old. And this happened on the same day. So what does that tell you? It's a provocation. On some level, the cops are saying, what are you going to do? Right? So what? Chauvin's on trial. What are y'all going to do? And at some point, us black folks are going to figure something out because the cops haven't stopped what they're doing. It's like being on the street. If a cat keeps doing stuff to you, right, and he keeps doing, and you don't do nothing, well, at some point, he's going to figure you a punk and do worse stuff to you at some point. I mean, that's where we are. But I told you, we're going to talk politics here. They keep doing stuff to us, and we're not pushing back. And so now the cops are saying, you see it everywhere, kind of F you. And in fact, the cops are trying to provoke the kids. I saw it as a provocation. And one of the kids called me and said, "Hey, Brother Mel," he said, "Man, it looks like the cops are trying to get us to respond so they can shoot us." So in spite of the fact this psychopath is on trial, these folks have not changed their behavior. The question is, what in the hell are we going to do about it?
Well, that's a great question. And to your point, though, you've at least said the good news, if there is any, is that the trial is a win-win. We either see for sure that this is the state confirming this is what the police are here to do, or they're going to, or you at least think of what a conviction would lead to there being some sort of clarity around punishing police that act this way, or will it just be a guilty verdict that doesn't lead to anything else, absent the push you're calling for or suggesting needs to happen?
They can make an aberration. They'll say Chauvin's an aberration, and I keep telling you that they're doing the politics in the trial. In the jury selection, they started out by saying, remember the prosecution said, "Well, this is. I want you to know that most of the police do their job." Right, and there's good police and bad. You see, so they're trying to propagandize it, bringing back this idea. Most people see past it now because a lot of black folks still want to buy into it because they want to see a black cop in the uniform as a good guy and whatever. And I say to people, once you put on that uniform, you're on the other side. It is what it is. But they're trying to bring back that idea that Chauvin is an aberration. He's just a bad apple, what have you. But this problem is this is a systemic problem, which the young people in Ferguson really did a good job of articulating, which is why Black Lives Matter all of a sudden popped up, because, they were the kind of liberal response because the system was really scared of those kids in Ferguson. Because remember, they came with that chant, indict, convict, send the killer cops to jail. The whole damn system is guilty as hell. And then this group comes along and they're saying some really different stuff. Everybody's talking prosecute the police. These other folks had a different message. In fact, they have a different message now. The people in our streets aren't saying defund the police. They're saying prosecute the police. Right now, no doubt, we want the police to stop handling mental health calls, but the call is for prosecution, right? Not because the defunding thing doesn't mean things like, I take a little bit of your money, but you're still the same person. You're still, the system is still intact. I still kick butt. I just have a few less resources. That's not solving our problem. Solving the problem is if every time somebody does something to us, they're prosecuted and held accountable, then at some point they'll say, well, this ain't worth it, you see. In fact, here and around the country, I was part of a group of folks, families from around the country that have been demanding. We had a Mother's March here in July last year. And I helped organize that as part of a group we called Take a Knee Nation, folks in Cincinnati and Boston, a few other, and families. We were organizing families who've lost a loved one to police violence. And we raised the demand now of reopening the cases. And you'll hear that in some cities around. A lot of the families are demanding, and we're trying to build a national movement around the idea of reopening the cases. In fact, I'll let this out the bag. We want to build another movement, another move to DC on August 28th. Last time, Al Sharpton got in front of it on some level and kind of watered it down. But the demand had been prosecuting the police. He got out in front of it and said, take your knee off our neck. And, it's kind of a nebulous demand. But our demand had been jail the killer cops, reopen the cases, and end the system of policing as we know it. Getting right to the heart of the problem. So anyway, I'm going on, but
no. I mean that you're right on. First of all, about the Sharpton takeover, I saw that. I was there, watched it firsthand. But I'm interested in this, what you started on a few minutes ago about the jury selection. Could you talk a little bit more about what you meant and what's really happening with the jury selection and this point about that you made about there not being any you said organic black folks on this jury? What's going on with that?
Yeah, when we get into the particulars of the trial, like I said, I've written about it, and I move on because again, the trial is just one mic. But to the point about the trial is that folks are now bragging about the fact that there are black people on the jury. They're saying, "Oh, there's all these people of color here in Minneapolis and Hennepin County. Blacks make up about 20% of the population. Minneapolis about 30%, Hennepin County about 20%. But it's a pretty white area for the most part. We got black folks in in different parts of the city, and we've got some new African communities, East African and West African. So the numbers have grown, but it's still considered kind of a white area. And so to have 4 jurors, in this case, they've got 2 African immigrants, they've got a black woman, and they've got 2 other people who call themselves mixed race. One of the women is from a small town outside of central Minnesota. And I wasn't in the courtroom, but fellow media folks said she looked like Queen Latifah. So she identified herself as mixed race. And when you heard her, remember, because we couldn't see them, she sounded exactly like a white woman. Some black people sound white. That's no big deal. But her whole cultural experience was clearly white. She said she didn't have any black friends. And she didn't have any friends of color even. In fact, she only knew about racism through some acquaintances that were people of color. So, so the woman doesn't have any real lived experience. And I wrote about the fact that just having black people, who are black in color, don't mean that you have indigenous black folks who can identify with black experience and experience of dealing with the police. And the one juror who was from the neighborhood, we called him juror number 76, they dismissed him. And he had real honest testimony. He said, look, the police have harassed me. He talked about growing up in the neighborhood near where George Floyd was killed and saying that whenever a black person was killed, the cops would run down, would drive down the street playing Another One Bites the Dust, antagonizing them. So that was his experience. So when both when the prosecutor and defense crossed him, and the judge decided that the 3 white men decided that, unlike everybody else, that looked him in the eye and said, yes, we can be impartial. He said it, but they didn't want to believe him. And so he was the only person with actual lived experience. I don't know about the 60-year-old black woman. She didn't really say anything about it, but he was the only black person with real lived experience with the police that would have, that would have made the jury, right? He was the only one there's like 2 people. Actually, there was a sister, and she said she didn't want no part of it. But this guy actually was from the neighborhood. He had experience. And so if you were trying to get a fair and balanced jury, I think if I was the prosecution, I would have wanted him on it. But the prosecution did not fight for him. They didn't even issue a Batson challenge, which you can challenge folks for striking a black jury just on the strength of them being black. And the judge was saying, well, no, it wasn't about his blackness. It was about his experience. But how in the hell can you separate black people from their experience?
And how would he have had those experiences were he not black? I mean, so
they got so many tricks, they make a circus look like it's just messing around.
So what else do you think is necessary to draw from this trial in terms of understanding the politics of the situation? And if there's anything else that you haven't gotten to, what do you think we need to learn from this trial, if there's something new to be learned from it?
Well, it reveals that the system is a system. It's going to continue to do what it does. And most people already notice inherently that, when we talk about justice is about us. They don't go through all these all this trouble when a black person is on trial, right? They don't jump through all these hoops. They say, hey, the Negro is guilty and we're going to prove it. And what I'm saying? And make it very hard for him to defend themselves. This guy, they're jumping through all these hoops and all this consternation. It's like, man, this dude is a murderer. We know it. They even have him looking like a human being in his trial. You see him look like him. I've had to sit in the court thing and I'm debating whether I can go again because I can't stand to be in the same space. When I was in the space there, he made my skin crawl. I'm gonna tell you something too. If you pay, that dude is a real monster. He's the real dude. He is a psychopath. Watch his response. Watch how in the trial. Watch how he looks at the video. Watching. He has no effect. Everybody feels a little bad. Some of the worst people I know feel a little bad about the stuff. That watch this guy. He's never shown any kind of sense that. None of it. He watches the video of him killing you. He just sits there and watches it. That guy is a psychopath. Remember, after he killed him, he went to his car and sat calmly in his car. As Mr. McMillan said, I don't respect you. He calmly said, well, that's your opinion. This guy's sick. He's an animal. You know what I'm saying? And they want to ask about black people. This guy's an animal. But they recruit these kind of folks. And then they lie about, training and recruit. They recruit these racist kind of folks, psychopaths, sociopaths to be police. And in fact, I heard somebody when they had the guy from Color Change on there with me, Rashad Robinson. He went on and on about some stuff. You know what I'm saying? Taking up our time to talk about real stuff. And he said something about, what did that dude say? About police unions. And I've written about this. There's no such thing as a police union. A union is an organization of workers struggling against the boss, right? The police are sold out workers. Yes, they are. They're sellouts. And people can get mad at me for saying, I don't care. They are sellouts. They're not a part of. Now, there's some guys who put the uniform on and still try to, identify with the community. Good for them. But the vast majority of people who put that uniform on, and they realize at some point, are selling out the working class. That's what they are. And so they don't make up a union. That's why they didn't call themselves a union. They call themselves a federation because even they realize that. Anyway, I just want to throw that in. But anyways, a lot of stuff will come out of trial. Bottom line is we see how unjust this system really is in this country. And how they're going to try, and the mainstream media is doing an okay job, but at some point they're going to swing, and you're going to even see them. They're going to try to keep pushing out the propaganda that, well, the system's not all that bad. Derek Chauvin was an aberration. He was an exception. There's more good cops than bad cops. I heard that on the local NPR this morning about, well, the lady said, well, we know that the majority, they talked about why white people may not be able to identify with black people in cases of police, but if they're in the jury, she said, well, because their experience is that the majority of the time, the vast majority of the police are there to serve them. I don't even think that's true on that. She said, but that's their understanding, that the majority of the police are there to serve. This is not true. The police are here to serve the interests of the ruling class, the power structure. That's why if you go into certain suburbs tonight, I don't know where you are, but I'm sure there's an exclusive suburb, and if you're there past 11 o'clock, you're going to get stopped as a matter of rope, right? You may pass there. They may not.
Yeah, I'll probably get away with it. Especially at night, I'll probably get away with it.
You're a little light there. They may let you slide. But I take my black behind through whatever the exclusive suburb is, and I'm going to get stopped just as a matter of course, because part of their job is to protect that upper class neighborhood. And we know that. And they know that you likely don't belong there. That's why I wouldn't, I have a lot of empathy for black people who go and live in these neighborhoods. And, as part of the price of living there, they're going to get stopped by the cops like once or twice a month. That's part of the price of, they tack that onto the price. It's not a price I'd be willing to pay. But anyway, I digress. Anything else, folks in the audience asking?
Just quickly, I'll check in a second in the chat. And folks, if you have any questions, please put them in or alert me to where they were. The only other question I have is what has the response been from folks in the community out there? Are they mobilizing around this trial? Are they waiting just to see what's going to happen? What's been going on?
Oh yeah, the protests are every day. In fact, it's like I'm getting old, wearing me out a little bit. But I organized some of them. So what can I say? Today is a protest in Robbinsdale about the situation where because it started in the suburb where the kid, I told you, they accused this one kid of carjacking. Somebody did commit a crime, but they had the wrong guy. And, they wind up jumping on this one kid and beating him up. And so actually a group of young people took it upon themselves to call a protest today at 6. So there have been lots of protests. We've been calling protests since George Floyd was murdered. And again, I got to reiterate, and we have not been calling for defund the police. There's the little special interest group called the Black Visions Collective that is kind of our version of Black Lives Matter that the nice liberals gave $20 million to. They're the folks that had one protest and threw out to defund the police. It's not catching on in most places. I mean, again, I don't have any problem with it. I mean, if you defunded the police and started another thing, cool thing, a more just thing that responded to us, I got no issue with that. But that's not what people are demanding in the street. Demands here are that, Chauvin go to jail. Of course, he's already been prosecuted. That's what it means. All we can do is give him his day of court. But that's the demand. And then the families are demanding that the cases be reopened. And there's been a lot of mobilization here of the families who've lost loved ones. We got a lot of that. We got a group called Family Supporting Families. that is like an activist group of families, about 20 some families, and they're not all black. They're Native, Latin, and actually 2 white families are part of it. And they're pushing for justice for all the cases. That's what we're doing here. That's what my buddy is doing in Boston. We got folks in Ohio, Baltimore, and other places that are doing some very similar things. What I'm getting at is back on March 6th, we had a national kind of a mass action where a bunch of groups and a bunch of cities all came together and put on the table, that we wanted the police prosecuted and that we wanted the cases reopened. And we're going to do something like that again on April 24th. And again, then May 25th, the anniversary of George Floyd's murder. And then we hope to go to D.C. August 28th, because again, the people on the ground that you ain't gonna hear from most of the press are pushing for prosecution, and they're pushing for these cases to be reopened. The families are carrying the torch when everybody else gets tired, because it affects them personally, right? So what I'm saying, like George Floyd's family, Valerie Castile, she and members of her family, Jamar Clark's family. Around the country, the different families of folks who passed. I can't think of anybody's name offhand who's more, some of them that are less popular, some famous, some not so famous, but these families are keeping, they're keeping that stuff in the news. They're keeping the torch lit for their lost loved one. And you got to know, if this thing really takes off, we're talking about thousands of people, thousands of families. You know how many people are affected by police murder? If we can even just get people out and people can see that, you can see that, this is a pandemic almost equal to the coronavirus. Number wise is not, but the way it affects people, it is, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, those are things that we're doing. So yeah, protesting not behind our brother. Protests, every day there's a protest, man. I mean, they may not show all of them because not all the protests are gonna be downtown. They are out in the city, nearby suburb. And I wrote this piece after they locked down the city, because where I'm at is I'm literally across the street from where you're seeing on the film. I'm across the street from the courthouse in what's called a little media center, and everything is fenced off. And I wrote a piece about it, saying that the reason that they did this is they're trying to project. Wrote a piece called Fortress Minneapolis, City Violence Baits the Community, because what they were doing is they're projecting onto the community that it was violent. I remember the system was violent. We got Derek Chauvin on trial for murdering one of us, not vice versa. And so, but they want to project on us that, we're going to be savage. And there was uprising, there was riot, whatever. But, they didn't respond to them races on January 6th like that. You know what I'm saying? So this is a projection. And also it's like, like red baiting. It's saying that we're not legitimate because we were violent. So I call it violence baiting, right? So, we don't have to hear, just like how they do black people. And like the defense is trying to do they're like trying to do the witnesses and who witnessed, they're saying they're angry, so they don't count. Remember Donald Williams pushed back on him. So no, dude, I wasn't angry. I was professional. So, the thing in our society, if a black man's angry, we ain't got to listen to nothing he got to say. Right. So they pushed out that trope. So those are the things, I hope I did a good job of explaining the background here. And people upset, folks don't have no confidence in the system. They're none. So they watching the trial, but people are like, whatever. You know what I'm saying? People fully don't expect Derek Chauvin to be convicted. I'm just tell you how it is.
Wow. No, you've done more than a good job. In fact, so much so that it's been requested by at least one that you have, I put the wrong, it moved on me, that you be given a weekly spot to come on here. And I'm obviously happy to have that happen. So anytime you want to come back or we can get you to come back to give us some more, we're happy to do it. I appreciate you taking the time. This has been very helpful because a number of people. Yeah, go ahead.
Do me a favor, put in the browser there so people can see our web address is Spokesman. It's not www. It's Spokesman-Recorder, just like recorder, like a tape recorder.com. And we're doing daily updates. I'm also doing some editorializing. So I have a funny little thing, and hopefully nobody in Minneapolis is listening. But the publisher was like, because I used to write a column called Millennials for the paper, right? And everybody would read my column, and I got a lot of juice off. And I also wrote for my blog. And if you go to my blog, fightthepowerjournal.com, you see it having been many entries, because I lost my favorite grandchild, my middle grandson, who I made for you, who's absolute genius. This kid was going to be me. This kid had all the sensibilities of a revolutionary, and he was only, he was right next to his 10th. He was a day from his 10th birthday when he died from an acute asthma attack. So that really kind of sunk my ship for a while.
I'm very sorry. I can't even imagine. Yeah,
because read it just on my page. You can read about him. If you scroll down, you see the piece I wrote on him, and you get a chance to see what this kid was like. This kid was absolutely amazing. And I know people talk about their grandchildren, you know how they do that, but this kid was an exceptional human being. And now that's probably why he's not here. Because if to meet you was to like you. He, you know what I'm saying, he loved everybody and it came off. You know what I'm saying? And he came to a protest and he was like, Grandpa, we gotta have justice. I'm like, all right, little dude. So, but he was serious. Anyway, so that kept me, I kept with the paper, but just couldn't concentrate like I like to. I was really well known for commentary. So I'm writing commentary again under an alias. So I just turned my name around because the publisher was saying, well, people are going to start equating you with me, and that's laughable because nobody in the world would equate my politics with hers. So I'm writing. I do have some. I think I have some commentary up as Lim Severe, which is my Mel Reeves just backwards. And so we'll see how long it takes for people to figure it out. It's pretty funny to me. I think
it's pretty funny too. Lim Severe.
When people figure it out. But the boss was like, well, you can write using a pseudonym. So okay. So I'll be Lim Severe. So anyway, I'll be putting that stuff up on my site. I'm going to start writing commentary again because that's my strong suit. And as you know, that's how me and you met. I can put pen to paper if I can brag a little bit.
Please do.
So
no problem. Yeah.
And people can read my stuff and judge for yourself whether I can write by going to Spokesman Recorder. Look at the little tag there where we have the Derek Chauvin trial and all the stories, and read my piece that I did before the trial started called Fortress Minneapolis. I'm really proud of that. But the ones after that too, I put up, and also the one I did about the interracial stuff, because we talked about how the Africans may not identify with organic indigenous African American struggle just because and then the system may use that. So if Derek Chauvin gets off, you already know where they're gonna go with that, right? And so they had Jared and them cousin on there. We had y'all's cousin on there. Y'all didn't survive a problem with it. So what you complaining about?
Yeah.
So I'm having too much fun. I'm gonna go back and see if I can get some more.
Did you? Okay, yeah. I'll be in touch with you.
I'll answer because I watch the show. If people have a question that if anybody asks a question, I'll answer it. I miss most of that thing anyway, and they're gonna break for lunch anyway.
People have just sent condolences and have encouraged you to come back as soon as possible. So there aren't any I don't see any specific questions for you at the moment. They just want you to come back. We'll make it happen.
And see that I've been doing. So now when you Google me, you'll see most of my writing stuff. But if you Google me, Mel Reeves, activist, Minneapolis, you'll see that I've done a whole hell of a lot of activism in this town and in Miami. Actually, when my mother was ill, I went back to Miami for about 6 years between 2002 and 2008. And I organized anti-war stuff there, anti-police violence stuff. So I've had my hand in a lot of organizing effort, done anti-gentrification work. One of the most proudest things I'm most proudest of, you may have seen this. HBO did a special on the Minneapolis North High coach. Did you see that? Where the coach was a cop and he quit the force. But it talks about, then the kid who's in Super Bowl, Tyler Johnson, is from my neighborhood, and they cover him from time to time, and they talk about him beginning to attend the school that was that was about to close. Well, what they don't talk about, the background of that is myself and some other neighbors and alumni of the school. We fought to keep that school open. It's a hell of a good story that I've got to tell it at length at some point. We fought. It's one of the things I'm most proud of. We fought to keep our neighborhood high school open, Minneapolis North. And it's been in the news. I think HBO did a spotlight on it, and somebody else, ESPN, I think, did something on them. But they've been in the news. The Tyler Johnson kid, they've been in the news around that because it was, newsworthy because people realize it's a neighborhood, a school in the hood, so to speak, and this kid's come out of the school in the hood. But Minneapolis is hood and not hood at the same time, right? North Minneapolis, and it's like the bad part of town. It's about 25% middle class white folks. So fascinating dynamics here. But it's a big scary part of town. Now, having said that, now, we have gang violence and I live in North. We have some gang violence and all the other stuff that comes with living, in America, in an urban area, filled with internalized self-hatred and, and taught and raised on white supremacy like we all have, so.
Hey, Mel, we did get a question here about the Panthers being in Minnesota. I don't know if you have time to talk about that.
Man, So, I should do the smart thing and pass on that because I don't want to alienate anybody that thinks that because let me just say this, man, and I don't want to be unfair to anybody, but I'm not seeing any group that's popped up and said they're panthers that operate like the old. Let me say that. Let me just say that, who have the same revolutionary perspective. Now, we know that the Panthers fell apart, a lot of things happen, but I've not seen that. Now, people keep calling themselves Panthers, and I watch them, and I don't see them operate like the revolutionary Panthers that we're familiar with. So, for some people that gets them all excited, they like that. I think we're just going to have to do some new stuff. We got to create some new organizations and, like I do with young people, learn from their lessons, learn from things they did right and they did wrong. And we just have to make some new organizations. We can't keep trying to regurgitate that because people don't seem to do it well. So that's just my opinion. So folks don't get mad at me talking about the Panthers, anyway. Hey,
you were asked a question. That's your answer. It's all good. Hey, listen, look, I'm not going to, I know you wanted to get back. I don't want to, or I think you said you were going to head back. I don't want to hold you all day. I'm very grateful for you taking the time, and I definitely want to reach out and make sure we get you back right away. And did we lose you there? Uh-oh. Maybe Mel had to go anyway. All right. Well, Mel, if you hear me, if you can make it back, I'll bring you back. But anyway, I big shout out to Mel Reeves for coming through and breaking all that down for us. We always love hearing at Black Power Media how we are distinct from other outlets. So we always want to encourage folks to come through here. And give that good interview that they can't give elsewhere. So we certainly thank Mel. We'll be back in touch with him as soon as possible. So by the way, folks, those of you who are here, thank you very much for jumping on. I know this wasn't scheduled much in advance. And the same thing with what's coming up at 4:00 Eastern when Kalonji Changa is going to be an interview with I just had it in front of me. He's going to be doing a tribute to Gil Scott-Heron and H. Rap Brown at 4:00 Eastern time, and that's going to feature an interview with Bilal Sunni Ali, who this is actually going to be very dope. Because Sunni Ali was is a world-renowned musician who played with everyone from Stevie Wonder to Taj Mahal, the late great Taj Mahal, as well as veteran Black Panther Party member, former political prisoner, and in the Imam Jamil Action Network. So definitely tune in. Come right back here at 4:00 Eastern for that. Please do like, share, and subscribe. It looks like we got, only about 42 people out of the 62 have hit the like button. So please do hit the like button and consider joining, because if you join, again, very quickly, then on April 4th, in just a couple of days at 12 noon Eastern, you can join the members only Black Radical Brunch with Dr. CBS and friends. And then the very next day, Monday, April 5th at 12 noon, you can join me for the 10th anniversary discussion of I Mix What I Like, a mixtape manifesto. So we have a whole bunch of members only stuff coming this weekend. So please do join the channel if you can. And thanks to those who have, including the new folks who joined today and even earlier during or just before we started this. So welcome, Emily. Thank you very much. And hopefully you will come on through this weekend. What else? I think that's it. Of course, tomorrow, don't forget Black Power Media all day tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eugene Puryear from the Punch Out and Breakthrough News is going to be on with me live from Haiti, talking about all that he's been doing in the coverage down there, in covering the situation down there, and giving us all the updates he can. Then at 5 p.m. Eastern is Lukman Nation. 7 p.m. Eastern is episode 9 of The Last Dope Intellectual. Man, I mean, she just did it again. She put together another banger of an episode with the Hood Communist crew and with one of our co-founders here at Black Power Media, Kamal Franklin. And wait till you hear what Kamal says about Noam Chomsky. Good Lord. You don't want to miss that, among many other gems. And then at 9 o'clock, Kamal and his crew will be back live for Renegade Culture. So tomorrow's going to be, a dope Fridays for real here at Black Power Media. So, free Hood Communist, we'll free them now, and then they'll be on with Last Dope Intellectual tomorrow. Oh man, and wait a minute, if Kamal not only said something wild about Chomsky, wait till you hear what he says in reference to Dr. CBS being the last dope intellectual. There's a lot of reasons not to miss any of the programming tomorrow. So anyway, thanks everybody again for coming through. Thanks again to Mel Reeves. We will definitely look to have him back ASAP. If there's anything that we didn't get to, or if there's those who see this later on and they got something to say, obviously do like my man Pierre tells you to, and
put it in the comments.
And let us know what you think. And as always, like Fred Hampton used to say to you, we say peace if you're willing to fight for it. And rest in peace, George Floyd. And let's take that Mel Reeves energy going forward from here and get some peace for real. So peace again, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll catch you next time here at Black Power Media.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.